If I've learned anything over 25 years of business, it's that finance leaders don't fail because they don't know the numbers. They fail because they're not in the conversation when the decision is made about those numbers. This is why we've created the CFO Review. I'm Paul Lynch, the CEO of Centage, and every week in each episode, I'm going to sit down with CFOs and finance leaders and unpack how they got to that seat, the decisions that shaped them, and how they're turning finance into being a real strategic partner. Great finance isn't about reporting the past. It's about shaping what comes next. So let's get into it. Hey everyone, and welcome to the CFO Review. This week's guest is Bo Meissner. He's currently the CFO of Grassroots Carbon here in San Antonio. I'm your host, Paul Lynch, and let's start. Bo, tell us about your early life and your path into your role as CFO.
Yeah.
How that went.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for the invite, Paul.
Welcome.
Great to be here. My journey is probably not as traditional as some CFOs. I'm actually a geologist. My undergrad's in geology.
Okay.
And I worked one summer up in the Northwest Territories of Canada, the 63rd parallel, where planes flew in your food once a week. You had to get on the CB radio every morning and let Yellowknife know 4 hours away that you were alive. A bear hadn't eaten you. As much as I enjoyed that, decided that wasn't what I wanted to do for the next 30 years. And my interest had started to shift into business and decided I was going to go back and do an MBA. So
your primary qualification is in geology?
Yes.
Then
I did go back and do an MBA.
Okay.
But I did not focus on finance in my MBA.
Okay.
My MBA degree, I have as many marketing courses as I do finance and accounting courses, as many operations courses as I do finance and accounting courses. You know, one of the things that I did when I was considering going back to my MBA is found some people that had done an MBA, had been in the workforce for 3 or 4 years, and chatted with them about what would you do anything differently if you could go back and do that. And I got a couple pieces of advice. One, if you're going to be successful, it doesn't matter what function you're in, you have to be a good business person. Yeah. Being an expert in marketing or finance is great, but the quicker you can become a good business person and understand all aspects of the business, the more successful you'll be.
I couldn't agree more.
So I did a generalist degree, but the other thing folks told me is that the one thing that prevents people from getting to a general manager, a president, whatever the title is and the size of company it is, that prevents people from getting there is lack of understanding of knowledge of finance. So I decided to start my career in finance. But in between my undergrad and my grad, I wanted to travel the world. I'd taken a year off before and backpacked around Europe and driven around North America and saved up a bunch of money to do all that. Went back to school. When I graduated my undergrad, I wanted to do that one more time. So I got a job as a district manager for a roofing company to make some money, to save up, to get my next ticket around the world. And after 2 weeks of doing that, I realized I had to hire my crew. I was getting the materials. I had to find my jobs. And this guy was taking 40% of my money and he wasn't doing anything. So I started up my own roofing company after 2 weeks.
So age and year?
So I would have been 22.
22, set up your own business, and geographically, where in the States were you?
I wasn't in the States. I'm from Canada originally.
Canada?
So I was in Canada, Ottawa, which is where I'm from.
Okay.
And I did that for 6 months. I was very successful. Ended up with like 2 crews by the end of what we were done. And I was able to, because I was just really trying to save a lot of money to be able to travel again. I was able to sell the business for more than the asset value, which was the ladders and the trailers and things like that. Because I'd had enough of a name and reputation of treating the customers well. That's how I got business, making sure every roof we did, that my workers weren't swearing, that everything was clean every night, that everyone was happy.
The little details that make the difference.
The little details that are the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
The customer is the most important. That's where you're going to get most of your recommendations from.
I never knew that. That's super interesting.
So anyway, so after that, then I went back and did my MBA and wanted to start out in finance. And I wanted to look for a company that was the best at what they did, where I felt that there was going to be really smart people, the smartest people that are going to push me, and hopefully that would elevate me from my mediocre level that I was at. And I ended up joining Procter Gamble in Canada.
It doesn't get much bigger on the CPG side. Were you ever tempted, like with a successful excursion into entrepreneurship? Were you tempted to go back to owning your own small businesses? I mean, once, like most business people that have had an entrepreneurial journey that don't stick with it are because their endeavor failed, but yours didn't.
No, mine didn't. And actually, a few people said, "Well, why aren't you continuing to do it?" Because I was making good money.
Yes,
I was making good money
for a 22-year-old as well.
I don't know. I mean, I think I always wanted. I wish I could have 3 lives, Paul. I wish I could.
We all wish that. Paul.
Yeah, one life where I could have traveled the world consistently. I enjoyed that. I spent 2.5 years of my life bumming around when I was younger. But family, I wanted to have a family. A family is important to me. And I knew I wanted to be successful at whatever I did. So for me, the best way I could combine all 3 of those was to join a big multinational corporation. Another reason I joined Procter Gamble.
Yeah.
So I could have the opportunity to work overseas.
Some advice I always give to young entrepreneurs, particularly young Irish entrepreneurs, because they sort of reach out a lot to me. They want to be startup guys at 19, 20. But I often recommend spend a couple of years in a larger entity, understand the mechanisms of business. It's not enough just to know some subject domain area which you built a business in. Understand how business is done.
Absolutely.
Do your training in Salesforce or Procter & Gamble or Coca-Cola, and then become a good business person before you represent yourself as an entrepreneur.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I think there was 2 stages I'd recommend that to young folks. One, if you're going to go do an MBA, don't go from your undergrad right into your MBA. So I had my company, but I also did a couple other things in between because people said, get some work experience, because when your professor's up there saying something about how it works, you can go, wait a minute, that's not how I saw it working. Let me talk about what I saw. So you can have a better experience, interactor experience, and you have some knowledge about what it really is rather than it being a textbook. So that was one stage people told me. And I think a company like Procter & Gamble, a big multinational company, the training you're going to get, is going to be best in class. And
talk to us about that. I mean, that must have been again, still young, jumping into a business as structured as Procter & Gamble, as successful, CPG.
I was young at 28 is when I started my career because of all the time I took off to enjoy life and see the world, and which played a foundational role, I think, in my success as well over my career.
As Baz Luhrmann says, the most interesting people I know don't know what they want to do at 30. The very most interesting don't know what 40. So
I'm still trying to figure it out, Paul.
As we all.
So I'm sorry, your question on Procter.
So yeah, I mean, you're moving. That you've had your undergraduate, you've done your MBA, you've ran your own businesses. You move into this structured company that is Procter and Gamble. What did that look like? What did you learn? What did you take from it?
Well, I learned how to operate as a business person. I mean, the great thing about Procter & Gamble, as well as a company to start out in, is you get a little slice of the business, and then the slices just get bigger with your career. So when I joined the company, I was a financial analyst responsible for one brand.
Okay.
And I was on a brand.
What brand was that?
It was Always.
The cheese?
Feminine hygiene products.
Okay.
So I would embarrass my wife in the feminine hygiene aisle, wanting to give recommendations to women, but or rearranging the product lines. But so you had a slice of the business, and your business team, which is multifunctional, you worked with that team, to come up with recommendations, plans on that business. So you start from the day you walk in the door. It's not like you have a slice of cost accounting or financial analysis on something else. You're really part of a team, and you own that business to grow it. So it sets a mindset, I think, which is what I was looking for as well. Of you own the business,
And did you have a sort of a management theory within there? Did you work to a management structure or code, or was it like at the behest of the brand leader?
well, the marketing people at Procter Gamble are typically the leaders of those teams, but it's multifunctional. I think even from early on, because of me talking to folks that have been out in the workforce for a bit, my attitude has always been, I'm a business person with finance expertise. I'm not a finance person crunching the numbers and saying whether it makes sense or not. And Procter & Gamble helped instill that in me as well because of the way it's structured. Now we had to, report to there's a category manager that may have had 2 or 3 brands that certainly oversaw things, and a general manager who may have had the division he had to go through. But still, the recommendations came from the team, and they were refined or revised by people that had been there longer.
Were you successful? Did the brand grow?
Yes. The brands, I was lucky on those brands in Canada that we had brands that were growing and we were hitting, market share milestones and et cetera. So yeah, but I can't say that all the brands that I worked on my 12 years at Procter & Gamble, that was sort of my foundation, were always that successvel.
I think that's probably true in everything in life, though. I mean, you've got to take the wins with the losses. As long as you're still learning and moving forward, that's really all you can hope for. So 12 years in P&G, and then you jump across into, is it Schweppes, Cadbury?
Yeah. So I worked started in Canada, got an assignment in Germany for 3 years. So I ran a head of finance for the German healthcare business. And then after a year, I had a finance for a pan-European business in Europe. So I had direct reports across Europe and multi-manufacturing.
So at this stage, you're early 40s, married, couple of kids?
So yeah, when we moved to Germany, our kids were both under 2.5. And I would have been 96. Yeah, I was mid-30s.
Mid-30s. So that's risk. I've done international moves myself many times, as you know, but there's always a risk when you're moving across, you're uprooting everything that you knew from your Canadian upbringing. You're going to Germany. You're bringing a young family. Did your family enjoy Germany? It was a fantastic experience, and it was a great experience for me. I learned a lot of things again that I think have helped me grow in my career. I mean, in Europe, when you're in a meeting at Procter & Gamble Europe, there's 6 different nationalities, sitting around at a table. So you see the cultural differences of how people interact in meetings and how they react to things, and realize we're all going for the same objective. And the Southern European people may be a lot more animated and vocal than the Northern Europeans, but everyone had a piece to contribute. And finding ways to get that out of everyone in those meetings. Because of the different cultural things, I think is a skill set that I learned because of that interaction when I was there. It's so true. When you move into sort of the Central European bloc, you know what I mean? You've got Southern, but I'm talking about mainland Europe. I think a lot of American companies are frightened because of those cultural nuances, and they don't really understand them. And I think the CPG companies did an incredible job in terms of managing that. I'm not sure that, the major tech companies have clearly, but the minor level.
Walmart tried to enter Germany when I was there, and they failed because they tried to do it the American way. Not understanding the local differences, or trying to understand the local and cultural differences as well as they could have. So that's an important part that.
Absolutely crucial. And trying to impose that onto a market never works.
Right.
The market must adopt. You can't impose.
Yep.
So was there when you took that opportunity to move to Europe with a young family, did you have to? Was there an opportunity to stay in Canada, or did you elect to do this?
I was pushing for an international opportunity. So yes, there was an opportunity to stay in Canada, but I was pushing for international. That I said, if I could have 3 lives, I would have had 3 lives, right? And this was something I was pushing for and wanted to have happen. And again, not everyone gets the opportunity,
And when the opportunity arises, grab it. I mean, so like in terms of that would have driven your career forward pretty quickly. In that you took that risk.
Mm-hmm.
So like towards the end of your time in Germany, you were there 3 years. What happened then? What was that path?
Well, the reason that the 3 years happened is the business that I was on, that was a pan-European business. The U.S. decided to sell that, another exciting product called the TENS. But the U.S. decided they were going to exit that business.
Okay.
And they gave us the choice in Europe whether we wanted to remain in the business or exit with the U.S. And we decided to exit because they were bearing part of the R&D costs and other things that to burden the European business with that wouldn't have made sense.
Okay.
So I was, once the sale was announced, the general manager ran back to the U.S. and myself and the sales manager were co-leading the business and running the business, up until the sale. And then I managed the actual transaction from a European perspective to the sale to a U.S. buyer. So once that sale was done, it's like, okay, what's next? We're getting close to it.
Yeah.
So we looked at potential other opportunities in Eastern Europe, but an opportunity came up in the U.S. For me to be the lead, I'll call it FP&A person for global fabric care, which was the biggest division within Procter Gamble. So,
so this is about the year 2000?
This is in 1999.
99. Okay.
Yeah. And P&G had just switched to global business units rather than local regional business units. So in my role, I had to understand all the global businesses well enough, interact with the finance directors of each of the regions, Europe, North America, Latin America, Asia Pacific.
Well, give us an idea in terms of what that business unit did in revenue.
It was about $8 billion.
That's a large revenue number.
It's a large revenue number. And, my job was to understand all the business units well enough, what their risks and opportunities were in their forecast, because we had to deliver a global forecast to the company. And, when Europe had an issue because they had a competitive threat come in from, one of our competitors and had to invest money, I had to recommend, hey, we should go to Latin America because Latin America is doing this. I think we should pull the money from there to fund the European business because that's much more important at this point in time. So I had to know the global business well enough to be able to talk with, the president of Global Fabric Care about what choices we should be making.
Super. So you were working in a global FP&A role and you're moving assets around. You're understanding a global business with goodness knows how many staff and $8 billion in revenue. So who you were reporting at this point into?
I actually reported into the head of finance for Global Fabric Care for North America because we were situated in the same office as the president of Global Fabric Care. But I was in, the president of Global Fabric Care, who's a guy called Paul Pullman, who went on to become CEO of Unilever after he left Procter Gamble. Yeah. But, I was in his office, multiple times a week.
And your working relationship there, I mean, that kind of direct relationship with someone that went on to run, it's probably a Fortune 50, I'm sure. How did that mold you as a finance person, as a business person?
Well, again, it caused me to have to take a bigger step back from the business because there was so much to absorb now on a global business, knowing each of the regions well enough, what their threats and opportunities were. I had to understand the business at a high level well enough to be able to come in with my recommendations about what changes we may want to make from a forecast perspective to deliver the total number to the company. So it's, I couldn't get into the details, but I had to make sure I was in the details enough or had enough conversations to understand the strategic choices we may want to make.
It's, I mean, that kind of size and global reach it's spinning plates. I mean, it's a difficult one. So, okay. So 8 billion, what next?
Well, so it was a great opportunity. Procter Gamble was a great company. But Cincinnati, the Procter Gamble home, had a different smell of the place. In Europe and in Canada, you had degrees of freedom that didn't quite feel the same, in Cincinnati. it felt more like the things you read about a Fortune 50 company that
Okay.
hard to change direction, steer the shift, make decisions. And it makes sense when you have tides of whatever it was, a $4 billion rand, you're not going to change things on a dime to, risk the business. So you test, et cetera. So opportunity came up at a subsidiary of Cadbury Schweppes called Mott's. It was a $800 million subsidiary of Cadbury, but it was run autonomously. Okay. So they made decisions about their manufacturing facilities. They had a profit number to deliver to Cadbury. So that was the type of environment I wanted, not where you had to go through layers of,
like a business inside of a business.
Exactly. That was run autonomously. At least
and
at the start.
Mott's, are they produce candy bars?
Apple juice, applesauce, but a whole range of other beverage products, as well as Mr. and Mrs. Teas and roses and like cocktail mixers and things like that. So a diverse number of products. It was a $800 million business.
And you're located in Cincinnati still?
No, transferred to Connecticut, so commuting suburb into Manhattan.
Okay.
Is where we were.
Nice part of the world.
And so I went in there as VP of FP&A and helped run that business. But very quickly at Cadbury, we rolled together with Snapple, which was a business that was 10 miles down the road, also owned by Cadbury. We became Mott Snapple. So now we're about a $1.6 billion business. They're also at $800 million. And then we ended up rolling up with Dr. Pepper 7-Up out of Plano in Texas, another Cadbury business. And we became Dr. Pepper Snapple, and then ultimately got spun off from Cadbury and became its own public company, now acquired by Keurig, and now it's Dr. Pepper Keurig.
Yes, that's right.
So
massive Texas success story as well.
Dr.
Pepper.
So I was in that business through all of those transitions, and got bigger roles as things amalgamated, and was very good. But we then shut down the office in New York that we had, and my boys were in school. We didn't want to move to Dallas, move my boys at that point in time. So I actually ended up. My boys were about to finish school. They were, how old were they at the time? 12 and 13. So an age where your kids still want to hang with you a little bit. They were about to get out of school, and I went and, I gave my resignation in. I could have continued to work for a while. I was going to get a little bit of a package because they were shutting down the office, but I quit when they finished school, took the summer off, spent the summer with them.
Wonderful.
Went up to a place on a lake in Canada that we have, and, enjoyed that. And when they went back to school, I started to look for my next opportunity.
Wonderful. Time you'll never get back, So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's precisely the right age as well.
Somehow I had the foresight and the confidence. I wasn't worried about finding another job. My wife may have been a little bit worried. You're going to quit, but
well, I mean, I think it worked out. So from there, you move across into.
So there, this is probably a decision point in my career that probably could have changed my career a little bit. So I had two job offers.
Okay.
One was to be CFO of North America for a European business. Again, it was about an $800 million business. That number seems to come a lot, but they're often all around that number. So I would have had Canada, the US, and Mexico.
CPG?
CPG.
Yeah.
Yep. But it was I consider those division CFO roles because you don't get into treasury. There's no investor relations. It was going to do all the things I'd done before, except now I was going to be the top dog.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to be a standalone CFO of a standalone company. And although I'd worked in public companies and I'd had a lot of great experience, I'd never worked in treasury, so I'd never worked with banks, never done any refinancings. Never been involved in investor relations other than providing, numbers to them. And so I wanted an opportunity that could give me those experiences. So I had the CFO offer, North America. That role was 1 mile from my house.
Okay.
The other opportunity I had was in New Jersey, 56 miles from my house. It was the vice president of FP&A of a company that had gone public 6 months before. But I was promised that, hey, we want to get you involved in the bank relationships and over time get you to own those relationships. There was an IR person, but we want you to really be joined at the hip with the IR person as we're crafting our story. So I took the VP FP&A of a $200 million business over CFO North America for an $800 million business because I felt it was... some people would consider it a sideways move, and why wouldn't you take the title? But for me, it was going to give me experiences that I wasn't going to get at the other one. That was going to get me my ultimate end goal, which was to be a CFO of a standalone business.
So let's dig into that because it's the CFO role is way less risk. It can come off your resume, and 800 million will bleed into 2 billion, and you've already managed at a senior level within P&G 8 billion. That's a risky move.
If you've been listening to my story, risk doesn't bother me.
I think that's clear. And I'm not sure if we've touched on finance yet, Bo. I mean, everything we're talking about is business.
Well, because finance is business, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And the elements that I just described of owning banking relationships and investor relations, that's finance. That's,
No, it is. Here's a question for you. Yeah. The person that hired you into the 200 million role, did you personally know them?
Nope.
So you took a risk on them as well. They gave you a commitment that they would expose you to these things, give you access to it. Like in terms of your senses here, that's a lot of trust. So what made you, what was compelling about their offer that said to you, they're going to come good on this? This is going to be...
I mean, when I interview for roles, I ask as many questions as I'm being asked because I've never been concerned about being able to find my next role. I'm looking for a role that's going to be a really good fit where I think the business has potential, or I'm going to, learn things out of it. And there's another shift we'll get to later in my career that's become important to me. But so I had an opportunity to meet with the CEO and the CFO and the whole leadership team, and I asked a lot of consistent questions, to make sure the business was right, the culture was right, and where they were planning to take the business made sense. And generally, I think I'm a pretty good read of people. So when the CFO told me that, hey, here's what I want you to get involved in, here's what I'm going to give to you, I trusted and believed it. And
great. So it worked out?
It worked out great. Yeah. I ended up doing multiple refinancings there because we did 8 acquisitions in the time I was there. We sort of pivoted what the company started out to be versus what it became. It was actually a SPAC way back in 2000. When was that? 2009.
I thought we only invented SPACs in about 2016.
No. So the CEO had been successful in driving, a few businesses from 200 million in revenue to 800 to $1 billion in revenue in a very short time. A bunch of investors gave him some money and said, go find the next business you can do this in. And he identified a business called Smart Balance, which was heart health products. It's it's not a margarine, but a spreadable butter oil, like a butter.
Okay.
But also it was in multiple aisles of the grocery store. There was a popcorn, there was an oil there. So it was known for heart health at a time that, heart health is still a big thing, but was a focus. Yeah. But it was all premium priced products. And 2008 hit, the economy sort of tanked, caused a slowdown in some of the products because of the premium pricing. But as well, the original business model was to take that brand into multiple aisles in the grocery store, and that just turned out to be a lot more difficult than everyone anticipated.
Yes.
Dealing with entrenched and getting into sour cream with a more heart healthy version of sour cream, but then competing with Daisy, who has 20 facings and you have 2 facings in the corner.
Huge.
So
sure.
So pivoted into transforming the company into looking for food products that met a health need of a consumer. So we ended up getting into gluten-free products for those that had celiac disease. We bought a company out of Canada called Glutino. We bought a bread company called Udi's. And we bought 8 companies in the time I was there, which gave me plenty of opportunity, one, to get involved in M&A and also to do multiple refinancings and deal with banks multiple times.
And was the ultimate objective to list once you had filled out?
They were on the NASDAQ when I joined. So they'd gone public 6 months before I joined. When I joined, I was the only FP&A person.
That's gas for that size of a business.
Yeah. So,
I mean, the teams we come across for that size of a business, Bo, are between 8 and 12.
Yeah. So there was a consultant who, when I got in there, had I think it was 130 tab Excel workbook that they were doing all of their forecasting in. So
that was the moment where I started talking about Centage and spreadsheet chaos, but I promise I will.
Well, we can talk about all of that as well. But so my first job was because we're a public company and every quarter we're giving the estimates to the street, was to figure out this 130-page Excel workbook and undo it all and make it into something that made sense so that we really had an idea where the business is going and whether we could deliver what we said we were going to deliver when we said we were going to deliver it.
Well, we have a tool which we call the Excel complexity threshold, which judges in terms of whether or not you move beyond Excel. Excel's a brilliant tool. We all know that. Like, it's probably the greatest bit of business to business software ever written, right? So I'm not having a go at Excel, and I never will. But it comes a point when you have to report back to analysts, when you have to report back to investors, to the market. And a 130-page spreadsheet is just not practical.
It would have broken your model.
It would have broken our It would have broken our model. So
yeah. So anyway, so that experience was a great experience.
So, so just one thing, and I love touching on this, like in these interviews. 2008, the collapse. How did you pivot? Like, you're in this business. You know, you're like everyone else. The headwind has come up. You were flying. You're already on the market. Like, what was the pivot within the SPAC, within the business, when 2008 hit?
Well, I think, the CEO was great at scanning the market and looking for opportunities. And, I think convinced the leadership team, hey, I think we need to figure out how to expand the portfolio fairly quickly. And I think there's a niche that we can fill by becoming a food company that is meeting some functional health need of consumers. So we talked about gluten-free. We also acquired a company called Evol that does like burritos. I think you'll see it all over the place. It's just got natural ingredients in it, no preservatives, so everything that met some functional health need.
Yeah, it's early for that kind of functional health need on the food aisles.
Right.
And you're also, I guess, your position to acquire, the cost to acquire these businesses was probably competitive. So as long as you maintained, investor confidence. And you were reporting effectively with your 130-page Excel spreadsheet. There is, I guess, a canny CEO will see this as an opportunity to expand and grow.
Yeah. And it worked, and we did it. And I mean, the other people you have to convince is the banks, because they were putting up a lot of the financing for it. So each time we refinanced, we were doing a bigger tranche with building on acquisition economics on top of the economics that we already had. So
that within itself, I think, probably merits a book. How to negotiate with banks during that period in terms of following money. I mean, I always cite this area, particularly not so much in CPG, but on the tech side. This is what invented the modern VC. I mean, there was a gap in terms of the market where the banks would not lend.
Sure.
Because unless you had some kind of leveraged position, like premises or a fleet of cars or something, and the VCs came in there and took that market. The original ones were great and drove the tech boom, and then you had a lot of bad actors enter thereafter who really only wanted to raise 2 and 20 funds. So great. I'm moving away from you, and let's get back. So where we get through 2008, the business grows, and what next?
So ultimately, the business was acquired. So we acquired. There's a chart out somewhere in the universe that if you look at it, it's companies that have been acquired over time, and then the bigger companies that are acquiring it. And Boulder Brands was ultimately acquired by Pinnacle Foods.
Okay.
So I left and took another break. I think I finished up in August or something, and I told my wife that I'll start to look for a job when the golf season ends. And so in Connecticut, normally that's in October or something. And that year I was still golfing in January. It was outrageous weather. And my next opportunity I found was here in San Antonio at a company called NatureSweet.
Okay.
So it was CFO of NatureSweet. So
this was your first jump from VP to
this
CFO.
was the first time that I became the CFO of a company. And NatureSweet produces snacking tomatoes, is a leader of snacking tomatoes in the U.S. We had circa 8,000 employees, the majority of which that were in Mexico. We grow in greenhouse and passive greenhouses, mainly in Mexico, at one facility here in the U.S. And it was a mission-based company.
Okay.
So the mission was all about transforming the lives of agricultural workers. And I knew that going in, and I guess I didn't really appreciate it as much as I did after I'd worked there for a while, because every conversation that we had, typically it was always, how is that helping, forward our mission?
Wow. Okay.
So the company had goals that every employee, some of the places that we operated in Mexico were some of the poorest areas in Mexico. And the objective was that our workers had the ability to be able to afford a house in 2 years if they performed well. Something that's not necessarily in reach. But we had schools in our greenhouses, so that a lot of these people had no education. So they got elementary education, middle school, high school education within our properties. And
did this motivate you to take the role?
Yeah, it was one of the reasons that I interested me in the role.
Yeah.
But even upon accepting it, I hadn't internalized how important that really was, right? And
really well.
And what a big role it really did play in every decision that we made in the company. But it's also the company that made me go, okay, it's going to be really hard to work for a company that isn't trying to make the world a better place somehow from that point forward.
Okay. I can absolutely imagine that is a seminal moment in one's career.
Yep.
I mean, what's on the other side of that, and the realization that, clearly at this point you have some money in the bank. So that kind of realization that you're not just pitching up to create wealth for a small number of individuals, and this truly is a mission-based business.
Yeah. So again, a great experience. Had challenges along the way. The U.S. government is here. We're here to help. Put duties on products coming in for a period of time, 17%. Won't go into all the details. There's something called suspension agreement, and that the U.S. and Mexico had going back multiple years. That a bunch of rich growers here in the U.S. were using the government to enhance their empires, and the whole process gave me a peek behind the green curtain of how the government really operates and how some decisions are made, and the quid pro quos that happen on different levels. So interesting experience. We had to navigate some tough times, difficult times.
So what year is this? We're 2016?
Oh, this would have been in 2018.
2018?
I'll know that date because I just actually sent my friend and former CEO a picture of us walking in front of the White House going to talk to the Department of Commerce in 2018 about
Excellent.
this time.
Okay.
But it was a great experience. The first time I'd sat in the seat.
So the social entrepreneurship component here, I totally get. Was the business successful?
Yes, the business was growing rapidly. I think one of the opportunities that I saw when I went there is like, boy, we got this great brand called NatureSweet that's well known in the produce aisle, that's known for products that taste great and we harvest them at the peak of ripeness and ship them to consumers. Why are we not in other products? We got a brand here. How do we expand the brand and help accelerate our growth?
And did you manage to do that?
So we went into peppers and cucumbers and had a lot of learnings go through there. It wasn't all joy and success as we because we hadn't grown those before, had to deal with, other manufacturers or growers of those products and logistics and everything else. So it took a while. We made mistakes along the way that we learned from as we grew this business, but it was the right decision for the business to expand the product portfolio.
And again, it's that area when you're dealing with perishables as well. Your mistakes compound very quickly. So from the jump into the CFO role, how embedded in this were you? I mean, like, you were on you were driving this from the chair?
Well, I mean, I think I was the one that introduced that concept, right? How do we get into other things? So it became then, a priority for us to do that. I didn't lead every element of the expansion, but certainly met with, a lot of the contract growers that are in Mexico and a different environment. So really making sure we had good background checks on everyone and, everything else, and helped drive and launch that, and had to talk with the banks about it, right? Through the good and the bad, because they had a lot of money in our business. So tell them what was going on, communicate with them, and when we had the bumps in the road, communicate even more with them, right? And manage through that.
I think that's a misconception in terms of how you manage treasury and banking relationships. I mean, it's when you have the bumps in the roads, you need your banker on speed dial. You don't need him calling you. And I think those that fail in terms of that pillar of finance are the ones that go to ground. When stuff gets tough.
Well, I would say that the first time we had a bump in the road, I didn't have him on speed dial, but I learned very quickly, right, how important that was.
Important it is.
And then we managed it, from there on out. So again, as they always say, you don't learn from your successes, you learn from, the things that go wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what molds us. So NatureSweet, we finish up there. We now have the bug in terms of social entrepreneurship and, and mission-based companies. What next? So
a headhunter reached out to me for an opportunity at a company called Vital Farms. And Vital Farms is all about improving the lives of people, animals, and planet through food. So they have pasture-raised eggs. So what are pasture-raised eggs? So you've got your caged eggs where you got 1 million hens in a barn, and they're in a 1-by-1 cage, and they never leave that cage their entire life. Cage-free means you're in a big warehouse. You still got 1 million hens, but they're not in cages, but they're sitting on top of one another. Pasture-raised is a standard where they have a barn that they go into every night, but every day the door is open. They go outside. They have 108 square feet per hen on the paddock that they're on. And they get to eat insects and do dust baths and do all the normal hen things that you would expect. And in that opportunity, so there's a mission element of that. There's some studies that say that the eggs are more nutritious, that they look better, they taste better. So there's an element of mission based in there because for the animals and the lives that they have, they're living a better life.
Sure.
And
had you ever been in a battery, a hen battery before?
I had not. No,
I have been in many times as a child back in Ireland, and they are gruesome places.
Right. But I did go before I accepted the Vital Farms role. It was during COVID, so this was in 2020. The only person I met through my whole interview process, because it was COVID, was the CEO, because I said, I want to go and see a farm and see if what we say we're doing is what we're actually doing. And
he was in support of that?
And the manufacturing facility, which the standards in the manufacturing facility, was an air-conditioned, light, all these things for the employees. So I wanted to see that we were actually they were actually walking the talk.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I joined, and because the other thing that was appealing for me was I'd worked at public companies, and now I'd been a CFO, but I hadn't been a CFO at a public company, and Vital Farms was about to go public. So it was an opportunity for me to become CFO of a public company.
Great.
And I signed my papers the day before the IPO roadshow, so that I could be announced in the S1 as joining the company and will be taking over the CFO role, so the market wouldn't be spooked by why is there a senior executive transition so quickly after the IPO. And now I was sitting in the seat that I wanted to, that caused me to go lateral back at, my days where I chose the VP FP&A to get the treasury experience and M&A experience and the investor relations experience, all allowed me to have this opportunity be something that I was being considered for.
Wonderful. And I know Vital Farms, obviously. We've spoken about it previously. It's an amazing story. I mean, there were very few things that I would consider to be more ubiquitous than an egg. Mm-hmm. And you managed to carve out this premium, high-value brand within that kind of space. I remember speaking with one of the board members at HEB, and they removed Vital Farms products, and the consumers were up in arms, and they had to return them. That kind of brand loyalty around a product like eggs is phenomenal.
Yep.
So, can you talk to us about that? I mean, were you from the CFO seat? How did you drive that?
Well, I think the thing that Vital Farms does differently than others, because there are other people out there doing pasture-raised eggs and trying to be successful, is, and I'll get to the finance part. I always want to talk business, Paul.
No, it's fascinating.
Is Vital Farms gets the consumer at every step of the consumer journey. The packaging is unique sitting on the shelves. That packaging costs more, right? That's also environmentally friendly. So there's a cost there as a CFO that you go, do you really need that cost, right? Is there not a way we can do it cheaper?
It's not an enormous margin here.
Right. But the packaging is attractive on the shelf. It stands out. And that's consumer's first decision point, is on the shelf. So then if a consumer decides to try it, it's very expensive relative to lower tier eggs. They take it home. Now they open up the carton. There's a little newsletter in the carton.
There is.
And people read the newsletter. They read about the hen of the month, or they read about a farmer, or they read and get some interesting fact. And some consumers get hooked on that. They learn about what pasture raised really is and go, man, I want to buy food like that. Or they see on the end of the carton, there's a little stamp of which farm produced the eggs. And now they can go to the website and they can actually see a video of that, the pasture the hens are walking on, and the hens walking on that pasture. So there's something for a consumer in that part of the journey. And then very funky advertising. It's not traditional, Procter Gamble advertising.
I think what you guys managed to do at Vital Farms was there were two different kinds of eggs. There was whole eggs, and there was sort of artificial. You go to a bad restaurant for an omelet, and you'd get this reconstituted terrible stuff. And you created a whole new category. You managed to put something. There was a premium above it, which is, I think, what really drove your success.
Well, and as a CFO, again, one of the other big expenses we had was on responding to consumer complaints or issues or even praise. You'll see that Vital Farms responds to any posts very, very quickly. If a consumer had an issue with the egg, something happened, maybe it got crushed, going to the shelves, and there's a broken egg, because the quality standards that we had to sort out eggs that had cracks or blood or anything. There's a USDA limit in terms of how many eggs you can actually have that are cracked, slightly cracked, or have blood in them or anything else. Well, Vital Farms turned that dial way up to eliminate all of those, to make sure the consumer experience was always going to be the best. But if something happened to a consumer, they had a complaint about something, they got a cracked egg, we made sure that they were oversatisfied with the response, by getting 3 free coupons. So it means we had a cost of people on the payroll and things that we did that was higher than I had seen before. But it was an important cost, just like the packaging cost is, as a part of that journey to help drive the brand. So,
I love the concept of unreasonable hospitality. Go far above and beyond what the expectation of the consumer is, and then let them talk about it.
Yep.
It's I mean, there's a great book, Unreasonable Hospitality, around the 11 Madison Park. It's a great read if you haven't. So wonderful. So you're first CFO in a public company now, and that runs its course, and then we come into each other's kind of event horizons.
Well, so I was at Vital Farms for 3.5, 4 years, and so I actually retired. So I retired whenever it was, and I was retired for 2 years. And my former CEO at NaturSweet, who now runs another business here in town, called me up about a year ago and said, "Hey, I got a project I could use some help with. Would you interested in coming helping out?" And I went and did some consulting for that project, and I realized, as much fun as my 2 years had been, I had 6 trips traveling around the world. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
I didn't have a chance to do that while I was working as much as I'd like to. I played lots of golf, lots of tennis. I realized I was missing the contributions that I was able to make even on that project to helping make that business a better business, or identify things with it, and coach and lead and everything else.
There is only so much golf you can play, Bo. I mean, and there's meaning in the work.
Yeah, no, and I realized I was missing it, and found a great opportunity at the current company I'm with, Grassroots Carbon. Again, there's a big aspect of making the world a better place. It's a win-win-win business.
Maybe tell us a little bit about it. I mean, obviously I know Duracy, but
so we work with ranchers across the U.S. today to help them adapt regenerative practices. What does that mean? So it means the traditional way of grazing for decades has been sort of the cattle go on to one big field and they stay there for a year and they eat the grasses down to something that's very little. We teach them, adaptive grazing, where we make those into smaller pieces of land. The cattle may be on them for a day, move on to the next smaller piece of that property, may not get back to that first piece for a year. What that allows is the native grasses to come back. The seed bank is still there. When those native grasses come back, it also brings water. It brings biodiversity back to the farm. It can increase by 20 to 30,000 gallons of water per acre of land, which makes their land more resilient.
Yeah.
The other thing it does is it sequesters carbon.
Yeah.
Which helps offset greenhouse gas emissions. And what we do, is we sell the carbon that's sequestered to big corporates. We find the buyers of the carbon that the ranchers are sequestering as a result of these practice changes. And the big corporates need this for their ESG goals, their net zero goals, whatever they may be. So it's a win for the big corporates because they're doing that. It's a win for the ranchers. So the ranchers get more productivity out of the land. Their costs go down. They don't have to buy as much incremental feed. They don't use fertilizer anymore. Through periods of drought, their properties are more resilient. The grasses stay longer because now there's water that's being retained in the ground rather than running off. And it's extra income for the ranchers.
Yeah.
And ranchers, today, a lot of them have second and third jobs to be able to do what they're doing, to give us food, and put food on our table. I
mean, I love what you were talking about. Eggs, cage-free, pasture-raised. I mean, I'm familiar with regenerative agricultural practices, obviously. It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
What doesn't make sense is the terminology that's currently used for non-regenerative, where you've got grass-fed, grass-finished, all these different things, right, which are all effectively feedlots, which is generating vast amounts of carbon. And you take the same industry practice with the same output, albeit the output that regenerative is offering on grass-fed is somewhat healthier because there's a lack of required hormones and antibiotics and everything else.
Well, and they're getting more diverse.
And one of them is so impactful on a carbon sequestered basis and so positive in terms of the environment. And the other one, not so much.
Sure.
It really is. It's an interesting tilt.
Yeah. And there's a lot of education that needs to go on in all of this, right? Because, there's
I heard a great. You'll excuse a rude remark here. I heard a great comment about the requirement for intensive breeding of cattle to meet food demands, and it's equivalent to pissing in your britches to keep yourself warm.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about what we do is the ranchers also, over time get to increase their stocking rates. So they get to have more cattle on the same piece of land, and it's healthier.
Yeah.
The beef we eat is healthier because now they're getting a more diverse diet.
No, it's a great initiative, and it's a wonderful company, and I wish you really well with it.
Yeah.
It has the potential. This track that you're on in terms of mission-based businesses, from Nature Sweet through like Vital Farms. I mean, it's a brilliant mindset and motivation in terms of driving a career. It really is. I would anyone listening here the whole objective of this podcast is to take successful finance people and business people that have moved through the ranks, and help junior finance people like navigate that map, jump that Rubicon between being a contributor to being a contributor tactical finance person to being a strategic finance person and driving. And that's the right motivation in terms of how to drive a career.
Yeah.
Everyone that I've known that's only ever set out for their own self-gain, they've either been successful and they're miserable, or they've been non-successful because everything has been about them and they've been unable to build the connections required or make the tough decisions at that point in time.
Yeah, I would just say it makes the work more fulfilling.
Yes.
To know you're making a difference in the world, to somehow make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Right.
Really, really well put. So this has been really, really interesting. And I think I'd like to talk about the difference between jumping from the finance role, what changed when you became CFO. But I don't think we need to go too deep into it, Bo, because we've already covered most of it on a practical level. So maybe let's jump over that because we've covered it.
Sure.
Talk to me about where you see the future of finance.
Well, obviously, with the technological changes that are occurring with AI and everything else, I think, a lot of the routine and manual tasks that finance and accounting teams have been doing are going away fairly quickly and being able to automate. Yeah. And so what that will allow the finance teams to do is now focus on those higher level things. Well, what does all this mean, right?
Yeah.
Because today there's still a lot of time in a lot of companies that are manually inputting invoices or, paying vendors or things, taking up time that's not, will be eliminated with these new tools, or has been eliminated with these new tools, depending on what size company you're at. So I think what that means for finance and accounting people is they're going to be using a higher level skill. If they're going to be successful.
Yeah.
They're going to have to think about how they're going to impact the business in the area of the business that they do. How can they, using their curiosity, figure out how to make that better now that you're not worrying about inputting the invoices? I'll use the accounting side, as a first side. Well, now what insights can you provide? How can you improve the business somehow from a cash flow perspective, right? Cash is king in any business.
I think it's spot on. You know what I mean? We have the potential now to automate. So not like wasting our time by doing manual tasks. Not only is it a begrudgery, not only is it it's tough, it's not satisfying. I've seen more finance people disengage from businesses over the day-to-day monotony of doing tasks that they know could be automatable, but there's resistance within the business to invest in the infrastructure to allow it, then I have seen leave businesses because they feel they're being underpaid.
Well, and some people that may be in those roles are afraid of the automation because they're afraid, well, I might have a role if I bring in that tool.
True. But I think it's taking a defensive position on that is the tide is coming.
Yeah.
AI is coming. The other thing I'd like to talk about very quickly is the merging of senior roles within businesses. I've seen, we look at Salesforce, have just appointed a COFO, a Chief Operations and Finance Officer, and the finance. I always spoke about operational CFOs. I think, what do you think about that? Do you think roles are merging? Do you think responsibilities are becoming less specific in the future?
Well, I think access to information, right, which is what all of this stuff is going to do. The better that the finance team can disperse information to everyone, that they've got the real-time information and a tool that they can look at and analyze. And now the finance team is empowering those functions, how to look at it, how to think about it, is going to help the overall business. So I'm not sure it'll lead to a collapse of roles, all of this work. But I do think with a finance team that works with their functional business partners and gives them access to the information in real time, that you're going to see businesses do better as a result of that. So I think finance teams work with other functions today, but I think it'll enhance that relationship. I'm not so sure that it will eliminate roles because people.
No, I don't think it'll eliminate all roles. But if I look at, say, traditionally when I started in business 25 years ago, we had a marketing leader, you had a sales leader. Now we have a CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, and they're responsible for a lot of marketing. They're responsible for a lot of sales. You know what I mean? They may come from a marketing background and be running a sales function, particularly a transactional one. So I look at the finance person that also has the COO kind of position within the company.
Yeah.
I mean, who better to drive operations in a business than a very business savvy finance guy?
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think it depends on the business as well, right? I mean, I think there's certain businesses that lend themselves to that depending on their focus and what they're trying to do, and others that I think you may be better to have. I'm gonna call it a siloed approach, but you don't really want a siloed approach, right? Sometimes it's good to have tension between marketing and sales.
I agree.
And have that tension of, well, where am I going to spend the dollars? Where's the most efficient use of those dollars?
I always say a healthy go-to-market function. Sales are telling marketing that the leads are poor, and marketing are telling sales that they can't close.
Yeah.
So it's healthy.
And Paul, it's like everything else, right? It also depends on the individuals.
True.
Sometimes there's individuals that can sit over sales and marketing and manage that healthy tension. And sometimes you have a person that has a marketing background that always puts the money to marketing, or someone that has a sales background puts it to sales because that's what they know and come from. So.
And that comes down to the CEO. For the most part, the CEO needs to be able to navigate that, and be able to get the best out of his executive team. Okay, so we're reaching the end here. Let's couple of things, right? One specific bit of mentorship or advice that you feel hugely influenced your career, and I'm not talking about. It doesn't need to be at a senior level. This could be when you were 16 years old and someone said set up a roofing. But you know what I'm getting at, like.
I think it's be curious. Somewhere in early in my career, and I think I may have had these attributes anyway, but what I saw, what I heard from one of my mentors. I haven't had a mentor through my career. I've had mentors that have been great bosses, but it was just be curious. So some people go analyze a problem and they get to a solution and go, okay, I'm done. But not asking why, sort of like a little 5-year-old kid. Well, why?
Yeah.
Well, why? Well, why? Because sometimes that first answer is just like a high level answer and doesn't really get to the root cause of the issue. And if it's a problem you're trying to solve, you see that problem rear its ugly head again in 3 months because it's just solved a little piece of that problem, didn't get to the root cause. But by being curious and asking why, well, what's that going to do?
Great advice.
Why?
Yeah.
I think that's one of my superpowers I've developed over time. And that came from someone way back when to say, I like the way you do that. And that reinforced that, and it helped me get to.
Can I go back, if it's okay, before? Like, what your upbringing? Middle class, Canada? Was your father in business? Was your mother in business?
My father was a welder. My mother started out as a cashier in a grocery store. She ended up becoming like a software consultant for a company because she was working at a utility and they were installing a new software system, and And the software team said, hey, why don't you come work for us and train all the other companies that we have to do?
Amazing.
Did a great job.
And just
both my parents emigrated to Canada when they were 19. My father got in a boat, with enough money to get to Canada, didn't speak a word of English.
Where did they immigrate from?
My father came from Germany. So he was 19 at the time. My mother came from Finland. She was a nanny in the French, excuse me, in the French embassy in Paris when she was 16, and they got transferred to Canada, and she went with them. I think what I learned from my parents is like hard work.
Yes.
If you work hard, and you keep your nose to the grindstone, you can make things happen. So we had a comfortable life. We placed on a lake as well as the house and, everything else. But
an expression.
I learned work ethic from my parents.
Which is like, I mean, an expression we've used on this podcast before is, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's always been true.
Sure.
Last one. So what advice would you give your younger self? I know this is a tacky question, Bo. I apologize. What one bit of advice would you give your younger self now? And, that with the benefit of a career behind you, what would that be?
You're going to hate this answer.
Okay.
But I would tell me not to do anything different than I did it. I mean,
no, that's okay.
I took time. However, I had the foresight to realize that before I had a family and before I started to work, if I want to see the world, that's the time to do it. And I did it. There was risk in that, right? My parents didn't like it, despite the fact my parents were immigrants. Well, you're not going to go back to college if I do that, it means I'm doing something I enjoy doing. What's wrong with that?
But travel and the exposure to the different cultures, I mean, you can map all these things to different parts of your career going forward. When you're working in Germany, managing multiple different Central European ethnicities, with like having an understanding in terms of how to move between cultures is invaluable.
Yeah,
I mean, my children are citizens of the world.
Sure.
So I mean, this is essential. So not Bo. Not giving yourself advice, giving advice to a 26-year-old. They're sitting in a business now they're maybe approaching a director level, above a management level, a couple of $100 million business. They're stuck.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them?
Be curious.
Yeah.
Learn the business so that you can have a broader view, that you're not just focused on how do I make it more profitable, because it's more profitable and how do I grow it faster. So, work multifunctionally, so that you have the best perspective of all the functions of everything that's going to happen with your business, so you can help drive those business results. One of the lessons that I had to learn early on is I've always been a facts and data person, and there was a point at Procter Gamble where we had a budget, and I felt the budget was too aggressive in this one area, and I had all the facts and data to support it, but the GM felt that the marketing and sales team weren't being aggressive enough, and I had all the facts and data to say why I felt it wasn't possible, and the GM got really upset at me and pushed back on me, and I sort of backed down. And at the end of the year, unfortunately, my projection was the right projection, and the GM, took me aside and said, "Look, I remember the conversation we had when we did the budget, and I know you tried to tell me this, and you had all the facts. When I look back at it, those facts were right." And he gave me some advice about how to present it differently in a way that he could hear it.
I like that. Yeah.
So I had all the data, I had all the facts, but I didn't present it in a way that he could hear it. I presented it in a way that caused him to get his back up. And so he gave me some great advice about how to manage and navigate that. So that'd be another piece of advice to that director is, you may have all the right information, figure out the right way to present that information in a way that's not threatening, and that people can hear it. That's
really, on that note, I think we'll call it a day, because it's not. That's a superb bit of advice. Managing upwards, with those kind of conversations is always difficult. And the fact that somebody took time to not to resent you for being right, but to actually show you how it would have been presented better is great. Yep. This has been wonderful, Bo. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's been great.
Yes, it's this great fun. This has been the CFO Review. Our guest, Bo Meissner. I'm Paul Lynch. Look forward to everyone seeing you next week.